You're welcome. Now, let's go into another conversation here this morning, and it's about female genital mutilation, FGM. It remains a deeply entrenched practice in parts of Africa, including Nigeria, here, despite its severe physical and psychological consequences. According to according to the United Nations, Nigeria accounts for one of the highest number of FGM cases globally, affecting millions of girls and women. Now, while advocacy and legislation have made progress, the practice persists due to cultural, religious, and also societal pressures.
So how can we accelerate efforts to end FGM? And what role do grassroots organizations, policymakers, and communities play in this fight? And so to answer these questions and join us to shed a bit more light on this issue is Blessing Eze. She's the founder of Women of Inestimable Values Foundation, an organization that's dedicated to women's. Mrs. Eze, we want to say thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Now, FGM is a harmful practice, and it's yet to still persist in many communities. Let's start with why this is the case.
Sorry, please, can you recap, please?
Why does FGM still persist in our communities?
It is because of probably our culture and the belief of our parents and their community leaders. You know, when we talk about FGM, we're talking about removing the external part of the female genital. And in our culture, believe that involving in that practice will help to prevent the female child from being promiscuous. So I think this is one of the reasons why it is still rampant. Most parents believe that if they should involve in this practice, they are helping the girl child not to be too exposed to sexual immorality. They are helping the girl child to be free from, you know, how would I put it now, to be wayward when it comes to involving in some sexual practices. And I think it is a wrong mindset, and it is a wrong mindset, it is a wrong belief. And as long as our parents or our leaders believe that FGM will help to fight against sexual immorality, they will keep practicing it. And so many cultures too still believe that doing it is helping the girl child without knowing the repercussion, the disadvantages that are being involved in practicing FGM. Thank you.
So, Blessing, if I was to ask in terms of percentage now, how many people do you think currently walking the streets, let's use Lagos as our containment area, have experienced this? And how prevalent is it still in our cultures with girls being exposed to this mutilation? In terms of percentage, how many people have gone through this, and how prevalent is it still in our cultures?
According to an article published, I think we heard that 20 million women and girls, not in Lagos, I don't know the statistic presently in Lagos, but 20.
Oh, I see. It seems that we're having some technical difficulties here connecting with Mrs. Blessing Eze here. We're hoping that she could come back, perhaps maybe reconnect so that we can finish this conversation about female genital mutilation. But I'll give you an experience here myself, Judy. I remember this was after school, during school, university, and we had to make certain visits to places in Lagos, and Ekpe was one of those places. And the fact is that it's so close to home, it is Ekpe, and these things are persisting. It's actually here in our culture. But if you had asked me then, and if you ask some people now, they'll tell you, no, it's nothing that happens here in our culture.
Sad.
But we're told that Mrs. Blessing Eze is back on. Mrs. Blessing Eze, you were telling us about the stats, and you were mentioning that about 20 million individuals. Please go ahead.
According to a publication I read online, more than 20 million women and girls have been involved in this particular act. So for Lagos State, there are some communities that are still practicing it. There are some local communities that are still practicing it. Like I said previously, it is a belief, regardless of the state, Okay, it is a belief. If I am in Lagos State and I believe that engaging in such an act will help my girl child not to be promiscuous, I will definitely get involved in it. But statistically, I can tell you that 20 million women and girls have been involved in this FGM we're talking about.
And let's talk about, you were talking about the risks as well, that oftentimes the reason why why FGM continue to persist in our communities is because they don't know the risk that's associated with the practice. So let's talk about the risks, social, mentally, and also the health risks that is associated with female genital mutilation.
Okay, FGM, the female genital mutilation, is an act that my organization is totally against. Okay, because of the risks that are involved in it. We have the physical risks that involves pain, bleeding. We have the psychological risks that involves like depression. When they grow up, when the girl child grow up and discover that, oh, I'm not having sexual feelings. And then you discover that this was as a result of an action taken on me by my parents. Definitely such a child becomes depressed. So we're talking about the pain, the bleeding, the mental health aspect, the psychological aspect, which is depression. Then we're talking about the medical aspect. I was reading an article and I discovered that most women that have been involved in FGM, the female genital mutilation, we give birth to CS. They will give birth to CX because of the fact that probably part of their clitoris has been removed or something. So it's the consequences of FGM is something that is alarming, and it's something we must not keep quiet about. It's something we must keep talking about. And that's what most organizations are doing now, most NGOs are doing now, because talking about the physical pain a child will have to go to, even in the process of carrying that act. Recently, my daughter was telling me about a girl that this thing was done on. I was like, how did you notice this? How did you know? She was like, I noticed the way she was walking. And because I've taken my time to teach her about sexual assault, rape, and all this other, so she was like bothered that as this girl be sexually assaulted or abused or something, that she was like, and she was walking in a way not normal from. Then she did a little investigation asking the girl, and the girl told my daughter that, okay, this thing happened, meaning FGM, female genital mutilation, was done on her by the mother. So that's what we're talking about, the physical consequences, the physical pains that a child will go to. Then we're talking about the psychological pain when they are growing up, it leads to depression. And what about the medical consequences? It's something that should be condemned by all stakeholders. It's not something we should joke about. Thank you.
Mrs. Eze, I'm going to ask you a very specific question here. And yes, I'm going to perhaps maybe ask you to get graphic with the answer. We're seeing pictures on the screen here of tools that are used for this process. And they're not exactly, expensive equipment. These are razor blades or metal tools. I would like you to tell us exactly the anatomy of it. How does this happen? What happens during these processes for FGM? What is taken off of the person's body, and what instruments are used? So just so we get a very a real-life picture of what happens and how dangerous this can be. What are the risks for after using these tools as well? So I will ask for listener or viewer's discretion as you tell, but please do tell us exactly the anatomy of female genital mutilation in itself, the practice.
Okay, I've not been involved in it. My mom did not do that on me. I didn't do it on my child, and I don't know of my great-grandparents. And I'm not a medical practitioner. But I think from my own knowledge, from what I know, is that there are various types of FGM, the female genital mutilation. We have the clitoridectomy, where part of the clitoris is removed. So we're part of it. We have the excision. Where I think it involves the total removal, of the female genital part. Then we have the one where they have to cut and restructure the external part of the female body. So I think it is the tools or the instruments that are being used. I think they are, like you said, they are common instruments where you can get from probably a pharmacist, a shop, the blade, because it is something that is being done at home by a group of women. The cultural, I think they know the people that do it. So there are different types. There are different types. We have the infabulation, the excision, and we have the glitodyectomy. And those three types involves removing either the full part or the partial part of the female genital organ. And telling me to express, I didn't get that question very well, but the express how it's being done is being removed. It has to be a practical. That and you have the picture and the video already with you. It's a practical scene. So the way it's been done, you have to bring a child, and that's the picture you have.
You've done fine in explaining exactly what essentially how these things are done. However, now based on this picture or image that you've created for us, what are the risks, infections, just so people are aware what these children risk going through? And also, I noted that you talked about the fact that sexual sensation is essentially taken away from these individuals once these things are done to them. So please go ahead about the risks.
Okay, the risks, I think the risks are part of the consequences stated previously. When you're talking about the risks of involving in this particular one, you're depriving the child of sexual pleasure. And this is the reason, or the number one reason why most African parents involve in it. I don't want my child to get spoiled. I don't want my child to become pregnant out of wedlock. I don't want my child to start following different men. To be honest with you, this is the major reason, the number one reason why most of our parents get involved in this. Should I say is it's not a devilish act, this particular problem, the social problem. This is because of, let me use it to make my child not to have feelings. Like somebody said, a woman that got involved in it, and some women that have gotten bad experiences with men, we see it as, okay, let me get involved in this thing so that my own girl child will not go through what I have gone through or what I am going through. So the risks involved, we have pains, of course. The child is going to feel pain. The infection, is when something is not done under medical procedures where people can do it. Like the girl I talked about previously, the mother did it, and I was told it was done at home with some women, So the infection you talk about is part of it, depriving the child of sexual pleasure, which should not be done, is also part of it. The depression, when a girl child starts growing up and she discovered that I cannot have feelings, or the way I ought to have feelings. Definitely they have feelings, but it's just minimal. I cannot have feelings like the maximum feelings I should have with my partner. What about marital problems that these things can bring? Of course, sexual intercourse is part of the marriage institution. If a girl child does not have those feelings, and probably the husband is always wanting her, definitely the husband can go out and have the side chick you people know about or call. So, and these things.
Mrs. Blessing Eze there, she is the founder.
And pose a lot of problems, just not to the girl child and also to the society. Remember, a child that is very happy at home will definitely impact the society.
Mrs. Blessing, Mrs. Eze, many thanks for that. I mean, as you rightfully put, just looking at all of this, FGM has now been criminalized in Nigeria. It's a crime, essentially, which is filed under the Violence Against Persons, Prohibition Act of 2015. And so with all of this that you reeled out, and knowing that it's still a crime, cases continue to surface. It's still very much here. So what then is the major challenge in enforcing this particular law against the crime itself of FGM?
The problem is, do we see it as a crime? That's just it. That our law enforcement agents, the law enforcement agency, have they been educated enough to see this? Yeah, it's a crime. There are laws. We have the Child Rights Act laws. We have the VAP law, violence against. We have the 1999 Constitution. All these are against FGM. But the truth of the matter is, even when we're talking about sexual abuse, sexual rape, there are still people that are involved in this practice and they are going scot-free. Of course, you say, why is it not something that people have been arrested of daily? It's not something very common. Number one, I would say, I will ask you and I'll ask myself, do our law enforcement agency, do they have the knowledge about the law, what the law says about this particular problem? Do they have the idea? Do they even have the knowledge? Do they have the knowledge that, okay, this thing is a crime? That's the first question I'm going to ask. Do they have the knowledge? I would definitely say maybe no or yes. Some do and some do not. I think was it 2011, there was a case of this particular agent that was reported. And we discovered from the reports we got from the victim, she said they were making jest of her. They were laughing at her, that you should be happy that your parents are helping you to be a good child. Because if they don't do this to you, you start following men. Do you want to give birth out of wedlock? And actually, when she brought the report, I was like, what? No, we had to follow up and do some educating, whatever, to educate them and things like that. So, number one, do people know this thing is a crime? That's the first question. Number two, of course, we know when you report a problem to our law enforcement agent, there are some that when you follow up, you get justice. There are some that when you follow up, you might not get justice. Should I say corruption? When the perpetrator of that act, he or she is able to bribe his or her way out of that particular thing. These are things that are very common. These are things that are common. Corruption, you can bribe your way out. Okay, the person involved in this can just bribe his or her way out, and they might not be able to get justice for the victim. Then inadequate knowledge. Inadequate knowledge of the people. Most Nigerians do not even know there's a law that is against this. Inadequate knowledge of the people, the citizens, inadequate knowledge of our law enforcement agencies, and probably corruption that is so rampant in our system. So I think these are the few points I'll be able to raise for now. Thank you.
That's plenty points enough. Mrs. Blessing Eze, let's talk about rescuing the situation. You paint a very grim picture about the fact that it's normalized in certain instances, especially with the one where the girl's friends were actually telling her that she should be happy her parents are trying to help her. So it's actually being normalized, and that's a very scary situation. However, what are authorities doing currently? Are there authorities on ground that are taking on this duty to make sure that this thing is a thing of the past? Here in Lagos, in Nigeria, where do people go to find, to be rescued of these kinds of instances?
Okay, yeah, there are authorities on ground. We stated 3 laws that the federal government have already put in place. When there is a law, a particular act becomes a crime. So the federal government has already put in place the VAT laws, the Child Rights Act laws, the 1999 Constitution, which makes FGM now a crime. So, like, if we can educate the people to go and report, you can report even at the police station. Yeah, our police are wonderful; they are doing their jobs. So let's give them kudos. Okay. So if you can report, one thing most Nigerians do not understand: reporting a case is more than just reporting and writing. When you report a case, ensure you follow up with your lawyer, and also insist you want the case charged to court. Reporting at the station, sometimes, if you're not willing to follow up on that case, they might not charge you to court. And remember, you cannot get justice when a case did not get to court. The police have limited rights to prosecute an offender. They have limited rights to prosecute an offender. Of course, the police are not even expected to keep an offender for more than 28 to 48 hours. But what we have discovered is that most Nigerians, when they report a crime, they are not ready to follow up. When they report a crime, they just report and they are not even ready to take to court. When it comes to court, they tell you, I don't want to get involved. I don't even have the time. I don't have the finance. I don't have this. You can report your parents. You can report the community that's trying to carry this act on you. When you report to the police station, after reporting, speak out. There are some NGOs that will help you. You know, there are NGOs that are doing this. There are laws that have been put in place by the federal government, so it is now a crime. Your own duty is to report. After reporting, follow up, and ensure this thing gets to the court. You cannot get justice without a case going to the court. The police have limited right to prosecute an offender. They have limited right to even keep an offender for more than certain hours. So what we are talking about here is that let the people report. The laws are there. It is now a crime. Please report. Please speak up. If your community are trying to carry this act on you, your parents, your uncles, your aunties, whosoever, please report. After reporting, speak up so that you can have a lot of NGOs that are coming to back you. Then ensure the case gets to court so you can get justice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, Mrs. Eze, you asked that your call to action is to speak up. But you also made mention of how this practice is entrenched in our culture, is entrenched in people's customs and, rights. It's even a rite of passage for coming-of-age girls, right? So how then can they speak up when it's their culture, when it's their customs, when it's all that they know? I mean, you told the story of the girls where the girls were telling their friends that they should be thankful for their parent. So let's talk about re-education and unlearning of this practice. What more can we do to push the envelope in terms of re-educating our populace and unlearning this practice to prove and show that this should not be in contemporary times, and this has more harm than good to the girls?
All right, what should we do to educate the populace? What you're doing now, you're educating the populace, all right? You're educating people about this particular act, right? Now, what you're doing is a great job. Kudos, at least among various stations. I think yours should be the first I'm watching. I don't know. I'm not a TV person, though. I believe in researching and reading. So what you're doing now is one of the things that should be done. People, we should talk about it. It's not a duty of one person. It's not a duty of a particular community. It's a duty of everybody, the church, the religious body, the schools. I expect most schools to talk about this, to teach the students. It was on the system. I was expecting schools to talk about it. It should become a thing of, if possible, the federal government can declare a day for it. Like, okay, we have the international body declaring CIS. The national body should also declare a day and say, okay, this particular day, all the schools should inculcate in the children the consequences of this particular act. So our federal government can do that. Let's have a national day for it. That is one of the ways. Then number two, the federal government can also probably educate the law enforcement agents. Probably a course, ensure they go for a course on this particular act. Then number three, NGOs, we can go to schools, which we have been doing anyway. My organization was in some schools under CIS to also teach them about this particular act. And there are so many NGOs that are also doing that too. So the churches should also follow suit. Churches like the Redeemed, the Half Population, Catholic, and they should teach the children, teach them and let them know this thing is wrong. If your parents are trying to do this on you, please speak up, please do this, and please do that. It is about, apart from speaking up, it's about educating the people. And I used to tell people, cultures are man-made. Who made the culture that a female child should go through this act? There were men that made it. It's not something, it's not even biblical.
Seem to have lost Mrs. Blessing Eze there. She is the founder of the Women of Inestimable Values Foundation, just giving us a bit of insight on this very important discussion when it comes to the fight against female genital mutilation and just how important it is to protect our girls and, of course, our teens. That's how we close the conversation, close the curtains on this discussion here. Mrs. Blessing Eze, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you for doing this because we're pretty much out of time.